Hi, my name is Vahan Davudyan. I'm a physics experimentalist for 30 years, and today is going to be so different because it's not a theory, it's science fiction and the fiction and also non-fiction. So I think you're going to love this because it's so important that you pay attention to science fiction and also fiction and non-fictions. And in fact, this happened to me like 30 years ago, and I was in Universal Studio, and then it happened to be Back to the Future, which was so much science. And when I was, so young, like 10 years old, I remember I used to read Jules Verne, which was one of the great novel writers in the world, French scientist, and then he was so good. And then I loved the one he wrote about the moon, the first man in the moon. And then there was another guy, English guy, his name was H.G. Wells. He also inspired by Jules Verne, and then he wrote so many books. And I was 10 years old, and then I was in high school, in elementary school, and then I decided to read those. Well, of course, I did not understand the whole thing because I was so young. But when I grew up, I realized what happened 100 years ago, finally it came true. And I remember those days, we were young, and then we were talking to the other people that, it is possible that one day we go in space and then we go in a different planets. And well, of course, moon is not a planet, but it is like a planet. So it wasn't easy. It was breakthrough in science. We had man stepped on the moon, and then we brought so many samples and so many things. But overall, this time is going to be so different, and then it's so much fun, it's adventures, and then I think you're going to love this, and I'm assuming I'm going to get maybe more than a million watches this time because it's so different. Well, anyway, this all started in 1994, July 1994 in Los Angeles, Universal Studio. And this was so amazing. And this just happened to be one of the best experience for the science in my life. At that time, I was 43 years old, much younger. And then I remember I took our kids almost everywhere, and this was one of them. Before this, we went to, Griffith Park, and then it was an observatory there. And then my kids loved that, they were so young. And then always I was trying to take them to the places that they can learn. And then I specifically told my son, you have to weigh yourself. There was a scale for the moon, there was a scale for the earth. And they said, Dad, this is showing 6 times less. I said, because you are weighing yourself in the moon. It's not, you are not on the earth. And then there was another scale by the earth, and then he weighed and said, yeah, this one is okay. So this is the way they learn. So of course, my main objective for the, have this one published today because of the young generation. I want to activate your sense of wonder that, every time you see something, you have to analyze it. That's the way you learn. So anyway, and then we can talk about Mr. Jules Verne and H.G. Wells later, but like I said, this is going to be a little bit unusual. It's not like a science thing I had before. It's not experiment. This is my observations. This just happened to be, this one was so much science. Well, of course, I have to read this, and it's a little bit funny name. Vahan is riding Back to the Future ride on Alcubierre's warp drive and entering in the wormhole to experience space-time warped by Vahan Davudyan, physics experimentalist, and this is my email, vahandavudyan 1948@gmail.com. Of course, you remember Michael J. Fox, and he was amazing. I mean, he's still alive. He's an amazing actor. And then at that time, he was so young, and then with his professor, always I remember, whoever they, did this, they must have been genius. Well, of course, I love good movies, and I have to mention Mr. Steven Spielberg. He is one of the best, directors in the whole world. And then the way he chose these two people, this was amazing. And then his inspiration with another guy came from this 1985 Back to the Future, from this movie, which they still, after so many years, they still show that on TV all the time. And one time they went to Disneyland, for the stars. And then when they came back, they realized this is going to be a real good ride. And in fact, in 1994, when we went to the Universal Studio, this was like 2 years old. But unfortunately, nowadays they took it off, and then it was replaced by Simpsons. This was so much science anyway. So you can see, well, of course, I will explain in detail. And this is amazing. This is called Mr. Miguel Alcubierre warp drive. He is Mexican physicist, and at that time he was also young. Now he's 60 years old, he's 30 years old. When he had this theory, it changed everything. I mean, this was breakthrough in science. And this is called Miguel Alcubierre warp drive. And you can see, well, of course, I will explain it later. It's a contraction, I'm sorry, and expansion of the spaceship. So, I mean, he was assuming this can go faster than the speed of light. Well, of course, I have to prove it in my, lecture today, that everything is possible, the way I talked about Jules Verne 100 years ago. Finally, we went to the moon, and now we're trying to go to the Mars and the other planet and beyond. So everything is possible. But this is a little bit, hard to digest, because it's beyond our imagination that we can beat the speed of light. But Mr. Alcubierre said we can do that. Well, of course, so many people invited him, and one of them, him, Mr. Michio Hako, and he has fantastic books about the science, and is a university professor. And I remember when I interviewed Mr. Alcubierre, and then he was telling that teleportation is possible, Mr. Alcubierre, and this is also. And then what happened, you can see my picture here, I am entering the wormhole. And I will explain why I chose this, strange, names. Wormhole, and then I went through the wormhole, and then I end up here, which was like general relativity. I found this picture. You can see how good this picture is. Albert Einstein said that, when you have mass, it will distort fabric of space and time. Now you can see we have a clock over here. It's a real clock, but here, once it's going through this hole over here, it's a black hole or whatever, you can see it's showing the fabric of the universe. So see, it's changing. Now it's warping time. Well, of course, this is another one, but I think I like this one better. This is another one, and you can see the front is kind of contracted, and the behind is expanded. And then what happened, if you're sitting over here, you can go speed of light. Well, of course, this is also called time travel. And then I mentioned here Back to the Future in 1994 Universal Studios. And this ride was 4 minutes. And I don't know why I remember the exact circumstances, because I have a fantastic memory. And that day I had 8 guests, and then I invited everyone. I said, not only I'm going to pay for your ticket to the Universal Studio, when we get out, we have to have like sandwiches and everything else, so I'm going to take care of everything. So this is so funny. You can see there's a boy and girl here, and then it's a Back to the Future, and I'm here riding on the Alcubierre warp drive, and then there's a wormhole here and general relativity. And honestly, I looked everywhere. This is the only one I could find. Well, of course, I couldn't find the real people, so we had to add this cartoon type thing. But this was exactly the way, I saw it 30 years ago, and it was a lava tube like this, and then we were going through this lava tube, and God knows, it was spectacular. I had never seen such an engineering feat in my life. Anyway, let me explain this Alcubierre. So what it is imaginary. It's a science fiction. And then he happened to be a good physicist, And then he said if we can contract, in the front and then expand on the back. So of course, this is a little bit beyond our imagination. So what happened, we can change the space and time. So in other words, we warp everything. And then we can go, even we can beat the speed of light. Well, I'm hoping that one day this will come true. Well, of course, it's not going to be my lifetime, but one day it might come true. But he explained the way it is. Back to the Future, 1994 Universal Studio Los Angeles, riders would travel through a simulated lava tube. So simulation is so important because I remember, I had a friend, he was becoming a pilot, and then we went to a place and then they showed that, there was a desk, you can see it, and then exactly like you're flying the airplane. And I remember exactly how that illusion works, and that is called simulated. So it says riders would travel through a simulated lava tubes as a part of time travel experience. Due to the optical illusion, 4 minutes I felt the space-time is warped. And this all optical illusion. So like I said, this is so amazing, but I don't know how Mr. Steven, Spielberg could synchronize so many things, because not only we were riding on those rides and then everything was so good, but also they synchronized, I would say, because I'm a science person, my precision is good. I always take everything into the consideration. I'm so meticulous. I watched 100%, even though I knew it's so illusion, but somehow I thought, I'm going through the wormhole, the lava tube, and the speed was spectacular. It was so good. How much synchronization we had that, we were seeing 4 minutes is a lot. And then some people were screaming and so and so. Well, of course, I knew almost how this works, but, I wasn't sure. I just got so lucky, and this was the best day in my life, because there was an old man, he passed out. Even though there was a sign all over the place that, you have to watch if you have a problem with your heart. And this guy must have been like 80 years old. Well, he didn't look bad or anything, but it looks like before we were in the line, and it happened to be one of the best riders, because people would wait like 2 hours, 3 hours, and we waited like 2 hours, and finally we got there. So they had to put, emergency stop. They stopped it. And that cart was right in front of me. I said, Wahan, this is the best day of your life. Have a look, and you have to be sneaky. Find out exactly how it works. Then when I looked down, I realized that those carts are not moving. Well, what happened? The synchronization and the optical illusion tells you exactly how they work. There was a chain going and then going back and forth. And then the synchronization was so good, you were thinking that you were moving. You were not moving. But what happened? The space was moving. And then, I told my friend, he was sitting nearby, when I go out, I'm going to write this down. It's going to be 2, 3, or 5 pages. This is going to be a good science. And since then, I haven't even done anything. I still had that paper. So anyway, this is the way it happened. And then when I looked down, I saw that cart is not moving. Well, what happened? They just have the sound. They have the light, and everything is perfectly synchronized, and the people, our thing, our perception tells us that, we are going through the lava tube. And then, even though I knew it's not true, but, I believed, and then when I got out, I couldn't get, I should snap out of it. I couldn't, because that was so real anyway. These are 2 genius people that changed my life. And like I said, I love this man. He was Jules Verne, and I don't know why, I took him like a role model. And then when I was kid, I was reading these books, and then most of the time I was, asking the older people what do they mean by planet and things like that. They will explain. But see, his imagination was amazing. Exactly, see, from Jules Verne, 1865, from the Earth to the Moon, from H.G. Wells, 1901, the first man in the moon. to Apollo 11, July 16, 1969. Science fiction became science fact. It came true, we landed on moon. And imagine when Mr. Jules Verne talked about this, exactly 100 years passed. And those days people said, well, it's just a fantasy. This is not true, it's a time travel. It's just a book. But you know what? That came true. And Mr. H.G. Wells did the same thing. He went to the moon and then, his imagination was good. He was also a good writer, also a poet. Well, what I mean, Mr. Alcubierre did this, and then he was at that time 30 years old, and there will be one day that we can have that Alcubierre drive, and then we can propel in space without even having any fuel or anything. It's just going to be so amazing, but I don't know when. This is the one in 1995 in Florida, and because always I talked about the science, my kids were so interested. I told them, hey, you guys have to get up early in the morning. This was exactly 28 years ago. They said, no, we can't. I said, no, we have to go see her. And God knows, we stayed there like 6 hours, and finally the lunchtime came. But we were far, behind the launch pad. Anyway, and this is the Atlantis, shuttle Atlantis, and I would say this was the best moment in my life, because that was the first time I noticed that they just launched a shuttle from here, and then well, of course this was added later. And then if you remember, when Apollo 11 landed, they had a capsule, and that was not a good idea. I'm sorry, but those days we had no choice. I mean, the technology was not like this, but now they decided they can reuse this, which is a good idea. Not only they, save them money, but also, it's easier because that capsule was accelerating so bad that the kinetic energy and everything else. But this one is okay because this airplane have, using laws of aerodynamic, can just, land so easy. So this was another good moment in my life. And like I said, not only today I'm talking about the, Universal Studio in my experience in science, but also my adventures. And this was one of my adventures. Probably this is one of the best things it happened in my life after the Universal Studio. And you can see this is my picture. We were in France 2 years ago, and then I just emphasized, I told everyone, no matter what, we are going to be there 1 week, but the one day I have to be myself, and I have no choice. I have to go to Pantheon, which is amazing place. This was like 300, 400 years ago, and I want to see exactly how that pendulum works. And in fact, this man was genius. His name was Leon Foucault, and I don't know why he was inspired to become a doctor like Galileo. He never became a doctor. He became physicist, and then he was a fantastic self-educated, like Albert Einstein, like Galileo, self-educated person. And then one day he saw blood, and then he passed out. Then his mom said, no, you're not going to be a doctor. Just forget about being a doctor, do something else. When he did this experiment, the whole world was stunned. They had no idea that, Earth was rotating, of course, but he was the first one. He just showed that, Earth was rotating. Anyway, when we went there, I told my kids that, my wife and everything, I'm going to go by myself, and then they had to go shopping or something else. Honest to God, people walked in and walked out in 20, 30 minutes. And this time I also got so lucky because there was a man, he was fluent in English. He said, you are getting notes and everything else. Why? I said, because I'm a physics experimentalist. He said, have you ever been here? I said, no, this is the first time. And then you can see the pendulum here. And this is exact the same picture. And this is exact the same place. And this is the Pantheon. And, and then I said, Vahan, you're in a gold mine. Make sure you have this person because he's fluent in English. He can give you so much information. Anyway, I just measured so many places, and it just happened to be I saw Voltaire's, statue there. There's so many other scientists, but this was great moment in my life. And then when I came back, and then I published this. Well, of course, you can watch this. This was the second time I was doing this for the pendulum, because unfortunately when I published my things on year 2000, at that time there was no YouTube or anything. I had to pay a lot of money for digitizing and getting DVDs, and some people were reluctant to watch. Hey, we don't have a DVD and things like that. And finally I'm glad when we came to Texas, then now we have like YouTube, and everything is so easy. I can put it on YouTube, you guys can watch it. It's just easy to watch. But what he did was beyond my imagination, because this pendulum was so good. But why he chose this place? Because it was like 67 meters long. And then if you watch my videos, which was published 2 years ago for this and then you can see how good, how comprehensive it is. And so many people emailed. There was a university professor said, Vahan, I have never seen such a precision in my life. And this was 4 parts for this, and then you can watch it. I'm hoping you're going to love it. And because at that time, I don't know why my camera was not good, and then I had to buy a new camera. Some places are a little bit blurry, but this was another adventure in my life. So, it's so important that always, I am concluding things, always I'm correlating things. Why? Because the reason why I have this, because always, if you remember in the past, I had so many theories for the aerodynamic, because, I was so interested to becoming a pilot, and then after that doctor, and then none of them worked out because, it was in a different, way. We went in a different way. So my friend was older than me, and I remember he's still alive. So he took me to these simulators. Well, of course, at that time, it was not advanced the way we are here now. I mean, we have so much simulator. And in fact, I checked, like YouTube, and then, you can buy something like this, like $4,000. There was another one like $40,000. There was another one $60,000. Well, of course, I don't want to become, like to fly airplane. But this is the way. The reason why I have this poster, I just wanted to show, especially the young generation, that if you pay attention, you can conquer everything. I mean, it is easy, but you have to pay attention, and then you have to analyze everything. If you don't analyze, you never come up with the answer. If you analyze, you can find that everything is possible. So he took me to this flight, it's called flight simulator, and then they were showing that the pilot is sitting there and then simulating. And then, well, of course, they know that they're not going to crash, but still, they have to know all the tricks. If something happened, how do they have to use this? Bring the nose up, bring the nose down. What is the elevator? And what is the pitch? What is the yaw? What is the, all those things in, through dynamic. So they will learn it. So now we can see from the pilot flight, simulator to non-fiction to fly airplane. So practically, I mean, in my opinion, this is like a science fiction, but it shows you exactly how to fly airplane. But in a real world, this is the real world, because you have like 300 people here sitting, and their life depend on you, so you have to be careful not to make any mistakes. So this is the real life, and then you can do your best. So my main objective here was, to activate the sense of wonder in the young generation and to let them know that everything is possible. And when I was a kid, I read Jules Verne, and then I had no idea that one day I will see that, that people will land on the moon. And there was one other thing, I was so happy about that, because, politics are always what's in a way. When I was so young, I remember Russia, United States, China was not that I mean, always they make fun of each other, they were no good. But now when I watch the movies, when I watch the YouTube, and then people from Russia come over the space station, they shake hands, that is spectacular, that is amazing. This is, I'm glad I saw it in my lifetime. So they work for the common goal. So that's the way we can, promote the science. That is the way it is. So thanks a lot for watching. And then if you have any ideas about the science fictions or anything, you can let me know. I can make a big movie out of it. So anyway, thank you for watching. And last time, my theory was duality for the charge and particles. Almost like 14 people liked it, and then so many people emailed me, and that is, I appreciate that. That is a good feedback. And thanks a lot for watching. And if you have any concern or any question, you can email me. And I appreciate you watch this, because it wasn't theory, it was like a science fiction, and then it was non-fiction and fiction. Thanks a lot for watching.